How's it going? Welcome back to another great video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Deathbound. This is a new Souls-like game, and yes, I know what you're thinking, another Souls-like. I mean, at this point I do feel like enough is enough, and when we do get new Souls-like video games, they truly have to innovate, they truly have to push the envelope forward, because when From Software themselves, which I absolutely love Dark Souls, so don't get me wrong, or Elden Ring, when the original developers themselves are using the same formula time and time again, I think it is time that this whole subgenre needs to truly analyze and, make different aspects of their games interesting for players, because even as fans of this game genre, now that it has become a subgenre of its own, and I do love this subgenre, you still do need to innovate, you still do need to add things. Just look at Lies of P as a perfect example. We also have things like The Surge, and there's a lot of different Souls-like video games, and a lot of them have varied results, because we get stuff like Mortal Shells, which is something that I don't think many people remember, Lords of the Fallen, so many, to be honest. In my humble opinion, I believe to innovate and to make a Souls-like game special, you need to add that special something, okay? And that's the same with any game. You can borrow elements with any creative pursuit. People get inspired by other people's music. I personally do when I create my own music. Check it out on Spotify, by the way, if you like cyberpunk 2077 type style of synth music with very different types of vibes thrown in there. But honestly, to make something next level, you truly have to innovate. You can't just copy and paste something. And that is the problem with AAA games at the moment, or quadruple A games as they like to be known by Ubisoft. Assassin's Creed, just look at that. Far Cry, the same copy and pasted formulas. This is why gaming is dying in many people's eyes, because there isn't enough innovation. And I personally am one of those people who believe that innovation is the only thing to keep games alive, to have that creative spirit. The Souls-like that achieved something did so because they had something extra, the art style and the themes of Lies of P. I did a whole philosophical breakdown of that game because it's actually very, very deep in some aspects, and I think it did a great job with its art style and its gameplay additions. The Surge, it had a unique setting. Remnant from the Ashes took the Souls formula but made it a third-person shooter. Does this do any of that? That's what we're going to find out today, so I do hope you like this Deathbound review. So here is my Deathbound review, okay? And bear in mind that with this Deathbound Souls-like review, it is based on what I've played so far. And honestly, for Souls-like fans, I think you're going to be happy with this, but for anyone who isn't a diehard Souls-like fan or Souls fan in general, you're not going to like this, and I'm going to get into those reasons why. This game is not like other Souls-like where it's just trying to borrow some elements to make it accessible for new players. This is really trying to go after that feel, although one thing that I think people might give it a chance on if you've never picked up a Souls game before and this looks interesting to you, is you don't have to worry about the difficulty, because so far the difficulty for me has been a non-issue, and I hope it does get harder. Like I said, I haven't played all of it. I have encountered a few bugs, which I'll talk about as well. But difficulty, it's not up there with Sekiro or Lies of P or Bloodborne or anything like that. So let that be known. If you want a casual, fun, Souls-like experience, this might be for you in that regard. So Deathbound is basically a medieval sci-fi kind of post-apocalyptic take on a Souls-like. But the thing that sets this game apart, as you can probably tell by the gameplay, is that you switch characters. You are constantly swapping between different characters, and you need to do this because the gameplay won't allow you to stick with one character. There are certain debuffs and buffs that you get by switching characters, and a lot of the characters are kind of on a cooldown with how much of their special abilities you can use. For example, like the mage, you can't keep just spamming, magical powers, otherwise it would be a pretty unfair game. You do have to use the switching mechanic, which I do like. So this is obviously made by a very independent studio, and honestly that is where creativity can lie if they believe in their own abilities. You know, we've seen that with smaller studios making some crazy games that have become absolutely classic hits like Valheim, with AA studios like No Man's Sky, Hello Games, you know, making that into what it is now. But for people who are just kind of starting out and have maybe done a few things but are not confident in their own vision, it's very easy to fall back into, you know, just doing what works. And that's the same with any creative pursuit, music, YouTube, you know, any type of art. And sadly, I think that is the trap of this game. It does do some unique things, and I'm going to get into the positives and negatives of this Deathbound review. The theme is quite interesting because it's a world based around these religious cults, and, you know, religion is very important in this universe, I guess, but it's kind of simplistic. There's, you know, a cult, a religion of death, and a religion cult of life, basically. But it does get more complicated over time, and there is some pretty cool character interactions that you can have with this, depending on what character you are at that given time, because like I said, you can swap characters. So it's a cool idea, but to me, the aesthetic, the design, just looks a little bit jumbled together. It doesn't feel very cohesive, and that was a bit disappointing for me. But let's talk about the gameplay, because that is what matters. So before we get into this Deathbound review, if you are new to the channel, I simply ask quickly that you do consider subscribing. It will only take you 2 seconds of your time, but it would mean so much to me. I'm so passionate about this community. I just love what I'm doing. I love creating this community. I love contacting and interacting with you guys down in the comments. I do live streams, so make sure you keep an eye out for them as well. And I have recently transitioned into full-time, so if you do enjoy this video, consider dropping a donation to support me on PayPal or YouTube thanks, or check out my music on Spotify. I appreciate it, and just become a member of the Wise One community, because if you love gaming analysis, reviews, philosophical content, you're not going to want to miss out. So this gameplay feature that I want to talk about, which I haven't seen many people have, is the synergy system, which to me was very interesting, and I really hope they continue to build on that. You either get a synergy or you will get a conflict between swapping these characters, and I thought that was a super cool idea. For example, if you're switching from the knight to the heavy build, the heavy tank build, and there's a synergy there, you will get benefits and buffs. But if you're switching the other way and you're switching from this knight character to the mage and they conflict, then you're going to get certain debuffs. And I thought that was such a cool, unique system. And you do get many cool, interesting systems like that in this game. The same thing with the health stamina system. Basically, health and stamina are kind of tied together in this, which makes it a lot more interesting. You can't exactly spam attacks in this game, so it makes it a lot more tactical. And that fits well because the enemies here are pretty slow and they are pretty obvious with their attack patterns. But I do like that. It reminds me of older, you know, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, where it's much more slow paced, and that's my favorite type of Souls-like game, the original Souls, compared to the faster paced Bloodborne or Dark Souls 3/Elden Ring. So I did like that. And this whole kind of concept that they're going for does remind me of older games, you know, that we would get more experimental on the Xbox 360 or PS3 or even back to the PS2. It does have that kind of charm to it, but it also means that sometimes there's a lot of jank. And at times I felt like this game was basically trying to be serious but ended up being funny often, which isn't a good look. So those are 2 positives. I would say the next one is the Morph Strike system, which is a positive. It's a pretty cool idea for a unique attack ability. You know, we are so sick and tired of backstabs. I don't know about you guys, but we are seeing that in absolutely every Souls-like. I want something new, okay? And this does have that to a degree with Morph Strikes. Basically, when you switch between characters, you have this option to then perform a powerful, slow attack, and it's really cool. But the problem is, everything in this game, you know, does feel very B quality. Like I said, it does feel very janky. The movement has got a lot better when I played it much earlier on. Like I said, this is based on what I have played so far, not the final release. So do bear it in mind. But still, it does feel janky, and yeah, that is just the nature of a smaller game, I guess. And the next positive is the fact that you get lots of different cool characters to swap between. Basically, you get, you know, I'm not going to go into the in-universe names, but basically there's a knight, kind of mage character, long spear-handed character, whammon thing. You get the tanky build person. You get all of this player diversity. So there's a lot to change between, which is pretty cool. And I like the fact that you have to, think about which characters are most important to your playstyle and then kind of use them as abilities within the game. You can't have every single character accessible at once. So the next two things are negatives, and that is the fact that the perk tree is very limited, it feels, and it's just not very inspired, mostly like I said, buffs and debuffs. But with a skill tree progression, I want more. I want special abilities, I want this kind of stuff, and there is that to a degree, but it does feel a little bit lackluster. Another negative is they're going for the same Souls-like / copying Dark Souls approach of equipment-based stats. So basically, wearing a ring will give you an increase in HP, for example, something simple like that. I would have liked to seen, something tied to equipment or armor more so than this kind of equipment system that we get in pretty much every Souls-like at this point. So the big negative so far for me is just it doesn't feel very cohesive. Like I said, the art style isn't really doing much for me at the moment. The story itself feels a little bit lackluster, and I don't want to send any negativity towards these developers or anything like that, because still they're creating a unique game, and this is very much on the indie Souls-like, and still this is very much on the kind of indie side of Souls-like. But honestly, with these games, I just feel like they really truly need to add something at this point, because just copy and pasting the same main mechanics from Souls isn't enough, especially when you're expecting people to pay a lot of money for it. It's not a full release price, but still it is a good chunk of change. And for that, you really need to capture something unique. And at the moment, it just feels floaty, it feels janky. It feels like the assets are just kind of cobbled together at times. There is a narrative here, and there are some times where the themes truly fit well, and especially when you're fighting the bosses, swapping between the characters and stuff like that. That's when it feels good, but I just don't know if it's enough for, Souls fans to really latch onto it. It's definitely not going to be enough for the normal gamer, but as a Soul fan myself, I thought I would talk about it if it's going to be enough for the die-hard Souls-like community. And I think if you absolutely can't get enough of this type of game, there's lots of them to play at this point, but if you want something new, this is doing some unique things like I talked about. The boss design as well is quite interesting. I do like the fact that they have many different stages. I know a lot of games are doing that now. It never used to be a thing. It used to just be one boss and that's it, but stages in bosses now is very normal. But I do like how they're kind of quite creative with it, with some of the bosses, and some of the bosses truly do need you to switch between characters depending on their attack pattern or their kind of abilities that they're using. I thought that was interesting, and I wanted to see more stuff like that where they impact the actual level design itself. And I think something that would really save this game is when you're moving through the environment, it actually matters what character you choose. Maybe there's only certain platforming stuff that you can do with certain characters. I'm not really seeing anything like that in the game so far, but like I said, I have only played some of the game, but I thought it was enough to give you a review of Deathbound. But all in all, what do I think in this Deathbound review? Is it worth it? Is Deathbound good? Is Deathbound worth it for the average player? I don't think so. If it's worth it for you guys as Souls fans, that's up to you. But honestly, it's just not polished enough for me, and if it was a lower price, maybe I would consider it. And at this point, I'm just kind of sick of Souls-like games unless they're doing something special. The team is trying to do interesting things here, but at this point, you really need to set the bar high. And I'm all for indie games, but only when they're doing something, creative, truly special. And this has moments of that, but not enough that it warrants me to fully recommend it at this point, I would say. But it's up to you guys. Obviously, we're all entitled to our own perspectives and opinions, so no hate towards the developers. I did have fun playing this, but something you truly have to nail for me, what's important for me, is world design and level design, strong themes and art style that make me invested in the universe, and of course the gameplay needs to be tight. The gameplay isn't bad here. Like I said, all of these systems work together, but the combat flow itself does feel a little bit stitched together. It doesn't flow as nicely as obviously something like Elden Ring, and you can't expect that, but I just thought I would mention that because it does feel a little bit clunky at times, more akin to something like The Surge or something like that. But that is my Deathbound review. I think it's not a bad game, but it's certainly not one that is going to change the Souls formula going forward, I think. So I do hope you enjoyed this review, and like I said, if you are new, make sure you're subscribed. If you're not, thank you to my returning wise ones for coming back. Shout out to people like Ugetto, who is a member of this channel. Consider joining as a member to get access to a whole playlist of added content, live streams, and all that kind of stuff. And dropping a donation also will give you a shout out at the end of each video. And if you want your name at the end of the credits, then make sure that you do subscribe and consider supporting the show. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day. Peace out.